All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. Hope you're excellent. So this lecture will be discussing a shift in demand and supply and interfering with the markets. Remember, we said a market is in equilibrium when the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. Now, the thing is, when supply or demand shifts, we get to a new equilibrium point. When supply or demand shifts, the new equilibrium point is where demand now equals supply. So the new place where quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. So look at this example. Our equilibrium point used to be here, right? So we used to be at price P1 and at quantity Q1. There, when our demand curve was D1 and our supply was S, that was where we had our former equilibrium, right? But something happened, okay? Demand has shifted to the right. So demand is now D2. Of course, our equilibrium point will change. So this is our new equilibrium point. So our price is now P2 and our quantity is now Q2, okay? So we've had an increase in demand. Demand has shifted to the right. So quantity has increased and price has also gone up. And this is our new equilibrium. Okay? And that is all there is to it. All right. Let's have some more examples. So we're trying to see the effect of a shift in the demand curve. Now note that our initial equilibrium point is G. That's where our quantity demanded is equal to our quantity supplied. Price at this point is PE1, Q is QE1. Okay? But look what happens. We have an outward shift for our demand curve. So our demand curve shifts to the right. And what happens? Of course, our equilibrium moves as well. So we used to be at G, but now with our new demand curve, equilibrium is now at I. Now look at that equilibrium point. You see that our quantity demanded by the market has shifted right. So it's more quantity is being demanded and the price has increased. So more people are demanding goods. The market has to supply more and the price has gone up. So think about it. If more people walk into your shop and they want to buy one item, you can increase the price, all right, that you're selling that item for. So that's what's happened in this case. Price has gone up and quantity has increased as well. How about if we have a shift in the supply curve as opposed to a shift in the demand curve? So once again, our initial equilibrium point is G, right? Equilibrium price is PE1, equilibrium quantity is QE1. But look what happens. We have an inward shift, supply curve. Supply curve shifts from S1 to S2. And just like we had before, we have a new equilibrium at point K. So our equilibrium moves from G to K, okay? All right, because of our new supply curve. Now look at this supply curve. Supply has reduced. So of course the quantity in the market has reduced, but price has gone up because that item is now more scarce. So think about it. If the number of iPhones in the market reduces, right, the quantity available in the market will reduce. So it will go down from QE1 to QE3. But because iPhones are now more scarce, the price will go up. So that's all there is to it. Now, comparative statistics is literally how we calculate, how we analyze a change in competitive equilibrium when one of the variables affecting demand and supply changes. So an outward shift in demand will increase the equilibrium, price, and quantity. Okay, so let's show that. Once again, we have our demand and we have our supply. Of course, this is our equilibrium point. Now, what happens if we have an outward shift in demand? So our demand shifts, and this is our new demand curve. What will that imply? Look at our new equilibrium. This is our former price, and this was our former quantity. But now with this outward shift in demand, you can see that equilibrium quantity has increased and equilibrium price has also increased. How about if we had an inward shift? If we had an inward shift, it would look like this instead. Okay, this would be our new equilibrium. Okay, and now you can see quantity has reduced and price has been decreased as well. So that's all we're saying for these two. An outward shift in demand increases the equilibrium price and quantity, and an inward shift in demand decreases the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, so there we have it. How about your supply curve? Okay, an outward shift in supply will decrease the equilibrium price and increase the equilibrium quantity. Okay, sounds complicated, but let's show it. So once again, our demand and our supply, right? Now we have an outward shift in supply. What does that mean? It means supply moves outward. Here we are. Okay, so this was our equilibrium price before, and this was our equilibrium quantity. Now look at our equilibrium price. Because more suppliers have entered the market, or just because we're supplying more, prices dropped. Okay, how about equilibrium quantity? It has increased. Okay, and that's all we're trying to say with the first one. How about an inward shift in supply? If we had an inward shift in supply, this would be our new supply curve. Okay, now let's look at equilibrium price. It's much higher, increased. But how about quantity? It's reduced. So an inward shift in supply will increase the equilibrium price and decrease the quantity. So here we have this too. All right, first we've had the outward shift in supply, this one, which increased our equilibrium quantity but decreased our equilibrium price. And then we saw the inward shift in supply increase the equilibrium price and decrease the quantity. So that's all. All right, so your class activity for this week is to determine what happens to the equilibrium point in this case. So we have our market demand for cocoa. Equilibrium is currently at point X. Okay, so to which equilibrium point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, will the market move if there's a rise in the cost of producing cocoa, right? if there's speculation that the price of cocoa will fall, and increased demand for chocolate, and a new tax on cocoa. So go back to our comparative statics and look at what happens to market equilibrium in this case. And that is your class activity. All right. So remember that when demand and supply shift simultaneously, the impact on equilibrium price and quantity will be determined by the relative size and direction of the shift, and also the shape of the supply and demand curves. So first of all, what is shifting more, supply or demand? For instance, say this used to be our equilibrium right here, right? Okay. Now, say we have a new supply curve. Supply shifts more and demand shifts, say, just a little bit. This is our new equilibrium point, right? Okay. You can see where that is. Below the former equilibrium point in terms of price and more quantities being supplied. However, if we had a situation where the reverse was the case, so here we had a massive change in supply. Here, let's have just a little change in supply, but let's have a massive change in demand. Look what's happened. Our price is now above our quantity, still more. Okay, so you can see that the impact on equilibrium price is different. Okay, so depending on the relative size and direction of the shift, so that's number one, and also on the shape of the supply and demand curves. Remember, we can have all sorts of demand curves. Okay, so we can have a normal demand curve, we can have an abnormal demand curve, right, for Veblen goods or Giffen goods, or we can even have constant demand curve for, say, addictive goods, an inelastic demand curve that looks like this. So depending on the shape as well. Okay, that's just to give you a heads up. But what you have to do is to think about what will happen in this market. Okay, so the diagram shows the market for cocoa. Equilibrium is currently at point X. To which equilibrium point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, will the market move if there is a rise in the cost of producing cocoa? So who does that affect? Does it affect supply or demand? Speculation that the price of cocoa will fall. Does that affect demand or supply, or both? Or increased demand for chocolate and a new tax on cocoa? So who does that affect? Demand, supply, or even both? So thank you very much. I'll see you in class. Have a fantastic week, and bye for now. See you later.